Hi, this is Melanie Lukasovic. I'm the executive editor at Capital Region Independent Media. We publish the Greenville Pioneer, the Ravenna News Herald, and a series of community guidebooks. We have with us today State Senator Michelle Hinchey from the 46th Senate District, who will now be running in the 41st Senate District. We'll give her a chance to explain that. And we also have with us Mark Vinciguerra, who is our company owner and president. Senator Hinchey, thank you for joining us. Can you please...
Thank you for having me.
Oh, sure. Please explain the district lines and how the state redrew them briefly.
Sure. So I currently represent the 46th district, which includes part of Ulster County, all of Greene County, and then part of Albany County, part of Schenectady, and all of Montgomery County. But every 10 years with the census, any district that is based on population gets new district lines, which makes sense, right? Because you base on population, and Senate districts represent on average about 300,000 people. So this year, based on the census information that we got from the census in 2020, a special map maker drew the lines, started with an independent redistricting commission and ended with a special map maker who drew the lines, again, pretty much solely based on population. And where I live is the new 41st, which encompasses actually more of Ulster County, a couple more towns, not the whole county, but a handful of towns, all of Greene County still, all of Columbia County, and Northern Dutchess County. So a true, real Hudson Valley seat.
Okay. Can you give us a little bit of your background?
Absolutely. You know, I'm born and raised in Saugerties. Grew up there, went to public school, graduated from the Industrial and Labor Relations School at Cornell, and graduated right into the middle of the last recession we had in 2009. Really daunting time for everyone, but especially to be starting your career, especially when you come from an upstate or more rural town like our community. The access to opportunity is slim, although much better now than it was a number of years ago, but still something that we're working on. I was really fortunate, though, that I got a job from an internship that I had that set me off on a 10-year career path in communications, working for technology companies and media companies. But at the end of the day, genuinely every day, I felt like there was a lot more to do and to give back and to be involved. And I learned that from both of my parents, but especially my father, who himself was in elected office, worked his way up as a toll booth worker to being in the House of Representatives. And I saw firsthand the kinds of positive impacts you can make in your community with hard work, dedication, and compassion, and bringing the right people to the table to have the conversations, and decided that I wanted to fight for and work for the future of our community, the community that raised me, where I want to raise my future kids, and where much of my family lives and where my friends are raising their families. And decided to run for office to really give upstate New York and the Hudson Valley, our more rural communities, a real seat at the table to actually talk about and advocate for the issues that we're facing that have often been left on the table for too long, but to really be a voice in Albany to make sure that we could get good stuff done. And I'm really proud over the last 2 years of the work we've done on that front.
Okay, you've been in office now just about 2 years. What have you been most proud of accomplishing while in office?
Yeah, there's a host of things. We got very busy very quickly. First and foremost, I'm really proud that in just my first term, I passed 53 bills through the legislature. That's the most of any legislator in Albany, and 52 of those bills passed with wide bipartisan support, some of them even unanimously. Showing that we're building the coalitions. I work across the aisle. It's me and my team, but that we work across the aisle and that we really get stuff done and that we're delivering for our communities. Some of those bills and some of the things we fought for include something I'm really proud of is the first ever state funding to support the Catskills Park. So much of our environmental budget, if it goes to stewarding land, goes to the Adirondacks. And we love the Adirondacks. We appreciate the Adirondacks, but the Catskills are so important. They're also the first park that you get to if you're leaving the city. And we saw such high numbers of increased tourism through the pandemic, and it's only continued because we've been discovered. Really, it's about time that we got our fair share. And so my first year in office last year, I fought for the inclusion of the Catskills Park in the state budget in two different lines, both for overusage and stewardship funds, and really proud that I secured that. And then we built on that this year to make sure that funding actually continues to grow, because we know we need things like infrastructure. We need to make sure people are safe. We need more forest rangers to protect our lands and our waters. And we also need to make sure people are safe when they're coming here and they may not know how to use the outdoors in a respectful way, right? May not actually have the equipment they need, or even the sneakers that they should have, right? Making sure that there are stewards there to help them and people help navigate, keep people safe, and also protect our lands. So really proud that we got the first ever funding for the Catskills Park. I also I chair the Agriculture Committee. I've been able to deliver the best budget for agriculture 2 years in a row in the state's history, really supporting our family farms and the types of farms that are here in New York State, which are smaller and mid-sized family farms, and also bringing them in to really be champions and be a help in our fight against the climate crisis with my bill, the Soil Health and Climate Resiliency Act, that helps actually pay farmers for the ecosystem management they're already doing. We were also able, and I was also able, to really fight for and secure the biggest funding investment in CHIPS funding and highway road improvement. Really important for our communities, really important specifically too for Greene County. And we were able to deliver $6.3 million more for Greene County alone in highway funding, which is new jobs, keeping people safe, supporting our businesses, and so many others. We've done a lot of other things too, but I'm sure we'll touch on more of them. But really, I think the takeaway is really proud to be able to deliver for our communities in our upstate areas.
Okay, moving forward, if you are reelected, what do you think are the top issues facing the district, and how would you address them?
Sure. So, housing is a huge issue here in our community. Again, we were facing a housing crisis prior to the pandemic, but we've seen that skyrocket over the last handful of years. People don't think about a housing crisis in upstate communities, more rural areas, but we are facing one. So I'm really proud that I was able to deliver the largest investment in upstate and rural housing the state's ever had this past year with $236 million. That's funding to help build more workforce housing and affordable housing, and also helping things like small rental development units, which is housing of 20 units or less, which is also what we need in our more rural areas. And also making sure that the Housing Our Neighbors with Dignity Act, which helped convert hotels and motels, of which we have many across the Catskills, to convert those into real workforce and affordable housing. That was actually a bill that was meant to be for New York City only. I fought to get that to be a statewide bill. And I also fought to get the $100 million that was allocated to help that transfer to be statewide as well. And that's actually funding that is being used today in Kingston for the Quality Inn project, and something that I know will be really beneficial to Greene County. Moving forward, short-term rentals is something that we need to figure out. Short-term rentals are a really important part of our economic drivers. It's how so many of our small towns and communities survived the pandemic, right? It's why our restaurants stayed open, our small businesses survived, our main streets, and also our sales tax, making sure that everybody's bottom line stayed as stable as possible. However, it's really strangling much of our housing stock, and each individual community needs to have the tools and the information to be able to determine for themselves what they need to do to combat their housing issues. So I have a bill that actually creates the first statewide registry of short-term rentals, which will help each individual municipality be able to see the landscape that's happening around them, give them the tools, the resources, data sharing, better taxing structures to make sure that they're actually getting the money that they should be owed by short-term rentals, making sure that we're actually understanding that so each town can do what's best for their community. So that's something that I'm excited about working on going into next year. Access to healthcare, an incredibly important issue, and something that I talk about a lot. Of course, we know Greene County doesn't even have a hospital and uses mostly the services in Columbia County, right? You have to travel an entire county to get healthcare services. And let's be clear, in Columbia County, there are no OBGYN services. You cannot have a baby in Columbia County today. That's unbelievable. And so making sure that people have access to life-saving care is critically important. It's why I fought for and passed our bill, which is the Rural Ambulance Services Task Force, because we know we're facing a crisis among our first responders, especially our firefighters, but our EMS. And really proud that we were able to appoint Greene County's own Aidan O'Connor to that task force. We'll now be keeping close watch on that task force, making sure that we're getting real recommendations on how to help with things like recruitment and retention, and solving different issues for our rural areas. We have to build on that, though. We have to make it easier to bring healthcare services into our communities. We have to incentivize doctors and nurses to be local and to stay local, especially if you're coming from our community. How can we help incentivize you to stay local? One of our bills too that I passed and really proud of is our allowing air ambulance paramedics to actually carry, distribute, and transfuse blood. We were the last state in the country not to allow that for our trained and professional air ambulance paramedics. We changed that through a law that I sponsored, and we've changed that, and now they are. And we know I've talked with Coxsackie Mayor Mark Evans, who, and the first time they went out, they saved a life. And so we know that that bill is really working, but making sure that we're expanding access to that kind of care. And one of the things I'm looking forward to next year is fighting to increase the reimbursement rates. We are losing our mental health and detox services across our state, but especially here in the Hudson Valley. We saw that in Kingston when we lost our mental health and detox beds. Those are beds that served Greene County residents. And part of that is because those reimbursement rates are far too low. So we're working on legislation specifically to actually get parity for those reimbursement rates so that that kind of healthcare services and that kind of life-saving healthcare can stay in our rural areas.
Okay, right now, it's a national issue, it's a global issue. Inflation is high, gas prices are high. What do you think can be done to spur economic growth in the district?
Thank you. This is definitely something that's on everyone's mind. And, we've been really focused in the legislature on how we can help people keep money in their own pockets. It's why we put a plan in place to fully fund foundation aid, how we fund our public schools, a 30-year promise, which we were able to deliver. And that's now a multi-year phase in. We've done 2 years of that 3-year phase in already. And in a lot of communities, they actually held property taxes flat because of that funding. We also increased universal pre-K, creating over 100 new slots in Greene County alone for early childhood education, which not only helps our students and our kids learn earlier, but also get our parents back to work. And bringing more money into their household. And so that's something that's been really beneficial and really helpful. As it pertains to creating new jobs also in our economy and in our community, one of the things that I fought for was workforce development funding. And we secured $115 million for a workforce development grant, which includes a $65 million carve out to support early job connections for young people and youth taking non-traditional pathways in training, having better tie-ins with our BOCES, making sure people know what jobs are out there. Our trades jobs are incredible. My brothers are both operators in Local 825. And so I know I've seen firsthand the type of change that can make in a family. So bolstering that support. I also have a bill that the governor just signed, the Textile Act, which expands manufacturing in our rural communities. And one of the things I'm also really excited about looking forward is a bill I carry to promote industrial hemp. We should be the leaders in our more rural areas and our upstate areas in industrial hemp. It's good for our agricultural economy. Right now, when we legalize and pass the MRTA, we now can use hemp to actually get rid of plastics from our world. Hemp clothing, biodegradable, making sure hempcrete is a building material that's incredibly strong that we should be using even more. Making sure there's a company in France that creates car dashboards out of hemp. We should be leading that here in New York and sorry, our light just went off, in places like Greene County. We have to make sure we're leading in that charge. So our bill ensures that generation and that new industry starts here in New York.
Okay, let's talk about broadband. It's an issue that is statewide, it's nationwide. There are still pockets of areas that don't have broadband, and it's become a vital service. How do you think the state and the district can go about getting broadband to people that don't currently have access?
Thank you. This is an incredibly important issue. It's an issue that I ran on in my last election because it is unconscionable that people in 2022 do not have reliable internet. At this point, internet should be a utility. We have to get on board and make sure we are building out internet service so that everybody has it. One of my first budget hearings last year, I questioned the chairman of the PSC, who was saying that New York State was 96% covered. We know that that is a fallacy. And I questioned him, and when pressed, he admitted that the reason they were citing 96% is because they were using census tract numbers. Census tract numbers do not work for rural communities. And so, because of that, and because we got them on the record, we were able to successfully put in a study for household level data to actually understand what the real landscape looks like. So that study is underway. It's actually coming to a close. It will be ongoing, but the first iteration of that is coming to a close. And because of that, we were able to secure $1 billion in the budget to actually build out internet service, making sure that that's actually going to last mile build out, and that that funding has to be approved by the legislature, not to create more hurdles, but to actually make sure it's going where we intend it to go. And that's to rural communities to actually get people internet. I'm also really proud that it was my legislation to repeal the right-of-way fee, which was a tax on broadband companies, which was a completely unnecessary stop for broadband companies to make it affordable to actually build out internet. I was able to repeal that this year. And I also passed legislation to make it more affordable on top of that for small and independent broadband companies, which are the ones that build out in places like Greene County, to actually do so by negotiating better with municipalities instead of having to negotiate per utility pole, which they often did. Now it's one contract, and directing the PSC to come up with a better cost structure for attaching to utility poles. And because of that bill, we know that people have internet today that didn't have it this time last year. Looking forward, there is a bill to make broadband a utility, sponsored by Senator Sean Ryan, and I'm a proud co-sponsor. That's a big priority going into next year, as well as making sure that the funding is getting out the door to actually build out internet service.
Okay, another issue that's on the national stage is reproductive rights and abortion care. Can you let us know where you stand on that issue?
This is an incredibly important issue, and I'm really proud that I am the only pro-choice candidate in our race, endorsed by Planned Parenthood and a host of other incredible advocacy groups, because I truly believe that the overturning of Roe v. Wade, the Dobbs decision, was a travesty. In light of that decision, prior to the actual decision, but when that decision was leaked, we passed a slate of bills in May, to actually protect people's rights, especially those who come to our state seeking care and healthcare, because reproductive care is healthcare and healthcare is a human right. The one bill that I cited earlier that passed along party lines is a bill that actually protects medical providers from adverse action and malpractice if and when they perform an abortion on someone who comes from an anti-abortion state. Really important. So this is something I think we also talk a lot about, New York being safe and the decision not impacting New York State residents. I want to be really clear. The reason why we are protected today is because the legislature passed the Reproductive Health Act in 2019. However, access to care is still incredibly important and sparse. As I said earlier, you cannot have a baby in Columbia County. OBGYN services don't exist there. And I'm proud of a bill that I carry too called the Hospital Transparency Act, which actually requires hospitals to share publicly what services they don't provide based on policy. What we're seeing is a lot of our smaller upstate hospitals are merging or being consolidated with more religious affiliated institutions because they have the funding, they have the means. And because of those mergers, we're losing reproductive care, end of life care, and gender affirming care. But people may not even know that that's happening in their community because right now there is no transparency. So our bill requires both the hospital to be transparent and upfront about what care they don't provide based on policy-based exclusions. And it also directs the State Department of Health to do the same and to conduct studies about where healthcare deserts are. Because if we're saying that here in New York, a woman's right to choose is protected, we have to make sure we're actually able to provide that care here in the state of New York.
Okay, this is your final message to the voters. Here's your chance to make your last pitch.
Thank you. It has been an absolute honor to represent the people of Greene County and our district over the last 2 years. I ran for office to be a strong upstate voice in our conference, to be a strong upstate voice in Albany, and to actually get things done. And because of that, we've been able to pass 53 bills through the legislature. We've been able to elevate issues that are facing our communities, like terrible utility practices by Central Hudson and their billing scheme. It's actually legislation that I sponsor as well to ban estimated billing as a practice. People should not be getting completely unrelated bills or even not receiving a bill for months. We have to make sure that our people are represented and that they have abilities to create strong livelihoods, that our kids can afford to stay here, and that our natural resources are protected. And over the last 2 years, we've been able to deliver. I've been able to deliver on that, and I'm incredibly excited about the opportunities that we have ahead to build on that momentum, to build on that support, and actually get people the resources and the support they need in places like Greene County. I've brought a number of my colleagues to Greene County, one to tour Catterskill Falls to see firsthand what our forest rangers and the PBA of New York State are facing every day. And I also brought the chair of our child care and Children Families Committee, Jabari Brisport, to see what childcare looks like on the mountaintop in Tannersville. So I've been able to give people a voice and to give an insight into what life looks like. And because of that, get real things accomplished. I'm really excited again about the opportunities that we have moving forward to continue to build on that. And I look forward to what's ahead for all of our communities.
Thank you. This was State Senator Michelle Hinchey, running for the 41st State Senate District. Senator, thank you so much for joining us. And everybody, November 8th is Election Day, and wherever you stand on the issues, go out and vote. Make your voice heard and be heard and vote. Thank you.
Thank you.